Hello, my name is Jess, and I am a mess. So today I have a very special guest with me. This is Elijah, my husband.
Hello.
We have been married for 3 years, coming up in a couple weeks. And in honor of our anniversary, I wanted to share with you the story of how we met and fell in love and got married. And it's a long one, but it's very good, filled with lots of God moments, and I hope that it encourages and blesses you. So, a little bit of backstory. In about the 2-ish years leading up to before we met, we went through kind of a similar experience. Long story short, I was just in a bad place. I was really lonely and looking in the wrong places. And I got into some bad relationships, made some bad decisions. And when I was 15, I just stopped and thought to myself, this is not the direction I want my life to go in. And I was thinking, I'm going to be an adult in a few years, and I really need to start maturing and really kind of taking the reins of my life. And so I started owning my faith in Jesus Christ and just dedicating my life to Him, working on my relationship with Him. And right around the time that I met Elijah, coincidentally, I decided to become celibate until my 20th birthday.
I'll tell a little bit of my side of coming up to that 2013 year. I was just completely depressed and completely homeschooled, like no friends outside of church. And in youth camp, I would just hang out with the girls and try to get their phone numbers and just begging for attention and disregarding any kind of advice I would receive. I guess my parents saw that their kids being homeschooled in a high school age, they wanted to put them in school to see how they would do.
So Elijah started going to the school that I had been going to for several years, and we were in an essays class together. And the first day of class, I just completely forgot, lost track of time, and I was like 15 minutes late to class. I ran in there, and there was one seat left, and it was right next to this boy that I was acquainted with and, kind of considered him a friend, probably the person I knew the best in the whole class. And so I sat down beside him, and on his other side was Elijah. And he was just kind of, oh, this is Elijah. And it was just like a casual introduction, no starry eyes or anything. My first impression of Elijah was he's quiet. And I thought he could be maybe shy or depressed. I wasn't really sure, but I thought maybe we could kind of understand each other because I was shy and didn't open up a lot around other people. And yeah, I thought he was kind of awkward and funny, but just thought of him as a friend. And so what was your first impression of me?
I think Jessica was the first person outside of my sisters that I'd seen as like a tomboy that can just go into a group of like nerds and feel at home, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's kind of cool that God protected our eyes from like seeing each other. Like, I thought, he's handsome, but I didn't feel interested in him. He didn't feel interested in me. So I think it's cool that God protected our hearts until the time was right. So the two of us and that other boy basically just goofed off in class and chatted. And when fall break came around, I thought, what if I invited them over? And I thought, oh, I don't know, they're gonna think I'm flirting or whatever and this and that. So as I was just sitting in my house thinking about inviting them over, I suddenly had an evil thought from the enemy. Basically, that Elijah wanted to harm me and wanted to do something sexual to me. And I knew that was not from God, but it kind of made me doubt and be like, wait, is this guy, should I stay away from him? And actually, over the next few months and years, I kept having those kinds of thoughts come against me. And I feel like deep down, I knew that was a sign that there was something significant about our relationship, because the devil was coming against that and attacking that. And he was also attacking my purity. So I took that thought captive, and I went and asked my mom and was thinking like, this is weird. She's not going to say yes, but she said, yeah, I'm okay with them coming over. And then I asked them and they were like, sure. And I was like, this is so weird. I didn't expect this to like actually happen. But they came over, we hung out, we were super awkward. But then at the end of the day, Elijah was like, I want to invite you guys over next week. And I was like really surprised. And so it's so funny. Over the next several weeks or maybe even months, we kept trying to get together with that other boy and some other kids from our school. And every time we'd wait around and no one would show up. And every single time,
It's like, what?
it was just the two of us hanging out.
Kind of awkward. More awkward than before, because it's like my parents don't know Jessica very well. And Jessica's parents don't know me very well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, are you guys trying to get together or something? That was always awkward, saying, no, we're not in a relationship and we don't really text outside of hanging out. It was like so outside of my normal relationship with a girl.
It was like simultaneously the most ordinary relationship and the weirdest relationship.
Yeah. God turned off our hormones pretty much. Like, no clammy hands, no sweaty forehead, no sweat, no attraction toward each other, which was interesting. I think we needed that. God knew we needed that.
Yes. So about 1 year into our relationship, I had been thinking about it for a while, and finally one day I said, like, yeah, Elijah is my best friend. And around that time, I had the weirdest thought. Now, like we said, we had like no attraction toward each other. We're just friends. I even asked myself over and over again, do I have a crush on Elijah? Do I like him at all? And every single time I was like, nope, nope, nope. And so this one night I was lying in bed about to go to sleep, and I just had like the most intimate secret thought where like I couldn't even say it out loud. It was so secret. And I said to God, I want to marry Elijah. And like immediately I was like, no, what? That's weird. Why did I even say that? But I was like, I know I want to marry my best friend, and Elijah's my best friend. But even at that time, I still didn't feel like I was attracted to him. So that was just really weird. But then several months later, we just graded on each other a lot. And honestly, I was really annoyed with Elijah, like all the time.
I had gotten like a full-time job, and I was working and paying rent and hanging out with different friends who weren't the best influences. And that kind of rubbed off on me. Jessica's convictions were a lot stronger than mine. I wanted to go do something, and then Jessica would be like, I don't feel peace about that. And that would get me into a sulky mood.
We weren't getting along at all. Like, we weren't having fun together. I felt like every time we got together was just a waste of time. And I seriously considered giving up on our relationship. I was just sitting on my bed, like talking to God, and I was like, God, this is really hard. I don't want to do this. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I felt like God just looked me square in the eyes, like he was really serious with me, and he was like, you have a choice. You can either give up on him, never talk to him again, or you can decide to never give up on him and you can be the one person who has never given up on him, never rejected him. I felt like this really heavy impression, like if I gave up on him, who was going to be there for him? And I felt like I had this opportunity to love him unconditionally and to be the best friend he's ever had. And I was like, am I just going to throw that away? And the weirdest thing, when we first met, I had this impression when I looked at him. I almost saw like sand, and like deep, deep down in the earth was this treasure. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was something inside Elijah. And I was like, everything inside me wanted to unearth that treasure. And this, like, about 1.5 years into our friendship, I still hadn't seen that treasure be unearthed, but it felt hopeless at this point. And I was just so frustrated with Elijah. I even felt in this moment that I was choosing give up on him or don't give up on him. I felt like God said, this isn't just about Elijah. This is about your character. This is about who you're going to be for the rest of your life. Are you going to be someone who gives up when it gets hard? Or are you going to press through and never give up, no matter how hard it is and how long it takes? And I was so, like, scared. And I really, really thought about it. And then I said, okay, I will never, ever, ever give up on Elijah. And that is the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. So when we had been friends for about 2 years, I one day was just really upset about all the conflict that we had had, and I decided to open up and tell Elijah how I was feeling, and I was really scared. I thought that he wouldn't understand and that he wouldn't care. He was actually really receptive, and he tried to understand, and he listened to me. And that was the first time that I felt like a spark of hope, like this could really be a great relationship. So I started talking to him about deeper subjects, and I didn't realize it, but I started going to him as a source of comfort and advice, and it started becoming unhealthy. And deep down I knew that I should go to God for those things, but I guess I didn't want to listen to reason. So this one night I was just talking to Elijah about how I had been feeling lonely and depressed and had different problems going on. And he replied in a way that I never could have expected or even imagined that he would.
I'd had a few situations where girls wanted to open up their hearts to me and be really vulnerable. And I had actually taken advantage of them and of their vulnerability. And I didn't want our relationship to go down a path of Jessica spilling her heart to me, and because I still wasn't in a good place, and God knew that. And so I basically reprimanded her and said that, like, I can't help you the way that you want to be helped. I don't know the answers that you're searching for.
Every word that he said hurt me so deeply, but I knew he was right. And he even said in his message, this isn't coming from me. These are not my words. This is from God. And I knew it the minute I read it. And I just was like crying and sobbing, and at the same time thanking God, like, for this amazing friend. And I was really encouraged to see that spiritual depth and maturity that I wasn't sure was there, because at this point in our relationship we hadn't really talked about God, and I just didn't know where he stood with God. And I felt so embarrassed because I knew I was wrong, and I wanted to reply right away and make all these excuses and say I was sorry, and God said, don't reply yet. And I was like, how long do you want me to wait? And the church that I was going to did this freedom ministry, and I had a session scheduled about 2 weeks from then. And God said, don't reply until after your freedom session. And I was like, he just sent me this really deep, convicting message, and you don't want me to text him back for 2 weeks. And I was so mad, but I obeyed. And so when God gave me peace to reply to him. We ended up talking a little bit, and I invited him over. And when we hung out, it was different in some ways. We were more relaxed and more intimate, and still not thinking at all about romance, but we were just closer and our relationship was stronger. And after he left that evening, I was just feeling so weird. And I was like, what is this feeling? And as I was just sitting there thinking, I was like, I think I'm falling in love with him. I was so scared and so mad. And I was like, this can't be happening. And you remember at the beginning of this video, I talked about being celibate. This was 2 years in.
Oh no.
To that 5-year contract. And I was so afraid that I was gonna mess up our relationship, that because of my feelings for him, I would say or do something stupid, because I had done that in the past where I liked a guy and our relationship just spiraled downward. And I tried with all my might to make the feelings go away, and I prayed for God to take it away. And over time, it became pretty clear to me that this was not from me. It was like this love that I could not explain, I could not fathom, I couldn't have come up with this myself, was just bubbling up from inside me. And I just knew it was from God. And so I was like, okay, God, if you want me to love him, help me to really love him. Because up until this point in our relationship, I noticed all of Elijah's flaws and the ways that he was unloving toward me. But now I was seeing all the ways that I was not loving him. And so over the next couple years, I prayed, and God helped me love him unconditionally.
And somehow she kept it a secret that, like, she visibly wasn't in love with me. I think Jessica told her family, like, right after she started having those feelings, so they kept it a secret from me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, guys.
So then, at the end of that 5-year period, my 20th birthday, we hung out, and in the back of my mind, I was like, should I tell him? But I didn't feel like a prompting from the Holy Spirit, so I didn't say anything. And that day was the last day I saw Elijah before he went to boot camp.
Yeah, I don't really know the root cause of why I joined the military. I think I was just looking for advertisements of jobs, and I liked the prospect of free college and free education, and I had no regard to, like, my friends here. And I think I didn't mention it to Jessica until it was like a month before I was about to leave. Yeah, I think the main thing that drew me there was the Holy Spirit. And I think the Holy Spirit wanted to build my character because I was flimsy, wishy-washy, didn't care about anything or anyone.
So when Elijah graduated from boot camp, it was out of state. And at that point, I didn't have a license. And I asked my family members, could you guys, like, drive me there? And they were like, that's a big commitment. Like, we have jobs. And so long story short, I had to ask Elijah's parents. And I did not know them very well at all. And I didn't feel very comfortable around them. But I worked up the courage and messaged them and asked them if I could go with them to Elijah's graduation ceremony. So the whole time in the back of my head, I'm thinking, like, does Elijah know that I'm interested in him? Do his parents know? And I was just worrying a lot. So I shared a hotel room with Elijah's parents. And this one night, I had just gotten into bed. Elijah's mom was asleep in the other bed, and his dad was sitting at a desk working on his computer. And he just, like, stops and turns around and looks at me, and he says, like, I got a verse for you and Elijah's relationship. Do not arouse or awaken love before it desires. And he said, like, I think it's cool that you guys are doing that. And I was thinking, like, wait, so does this mean, or is he saying Elijah likes me, or is he just saying like he can see straight through me. I was so embarrassed and I didn't know what to say. And he's all like, does that resonate with you? And I'm like, yes. Like, it was so embarrassing. And I thought, this is so weird and awkward. And I didn't think it could get any more weird. But then all of a sudden, Elijah's mom's phone dings. And she like wakes up out of a dead sleep, looks at her phone, and says, Naomi, who's one of his sisters, just highlighted this verse. Do not arouse or awaken love before it so desires. And Elijah's dad is like, oh, we were just talking about that. And she goes, I know, I heard the whole conversation. And I was like, you were asleep. And it was so funny and weird. But it was just so cool because I felt like that was confirmation.
And the day before she had told me her feelings, months later, I had read that verse. So just 3 confirmations of God's timing being perfect.
Yay.
Yay.
So while Elijah was in AIT,
I started to realize how much Jessica cared for me when they gave us our phones back, and I started texting Jessica probably once a day and just, tell her how my day was. And then after like a couple of months of doing that,
we ended up FaceTiming like once, sometimes twice a week.
I guess I started noticing that she was cute, and because I was blind. God had put like a veil over my eyes for Jessica's beauty.
And it was really cool for a while just getting to spend so much time with him. But after a while, I just started seeing some of that worldliness and those bad habits coming in, and just his countenance was different. And I got really scared because I felt like he was slipping away from me.
And in a way, I was just completely absorbed in my own life and not even really caring. I also picked up vaping and nicotine addiction.
And I had been praying for months, asking God for like specific, when am I supposed to tell him that I love him? And he started saying like, soon, really soon. I'm like, okay, it's soon. And then it felt like this thing that God was promising to me was like slipping away, and I was like, no, this can't be happening. Like, God, I feel like you've given me all these signs that Elijah is the one for me, and I can't imagine my life without him. And I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I just felt like he was slipping away.
If it wasn't for Jessica, I would have just let the influences that I had there guide me. I wouldn't have gone to church at all. I wouldn't have read the Bible in the morning. And I would have been just completely self-absorbed. But I guess I saw Jessica as a light, and God used her as a way to keep me on his path for my life.
Yeah, so I kept praying for Elijah and just asking God, when am I supposed to tell him? And I was asking God for a specific date, and I was getting really worked up. And finally, after just like begging and pleading and demanding, I finally just stopped. And I was like, God, you don't have to tell me. And it's okay if it's tomorrow or 10 years from now or never. I just finally gave up control and was like, it's okay. Like, your will be done. And I went to the bathroom. Then I was like drying off my hands. It was like that fast. And God said, July 13th. And that was about 5 or 6 weeks from that night.
And that just happened to be a few days after I got back.
So like Elijah mentioned earlier, my family was in on this. They knew that I was in love with Elijah. And I told them, I'm praying and God's telling me July 13th. And they were kind of like, okay. Like, they were really supportive, but they didn't have as much faith as I did. So the night before, I was very anxious, just like crying and worrying, and my family just prayed over me. And the day that he came over and I was gonna tell him, I had so much peace that could not have ever happened. That would have been like the most anxious day of my life because I was so afraid of him rejecting me or things just going wrong. But God just filled me with peace, and I felt so comfortable.
My parents were like, "You're going to hang out with your girlfriend today?" Just in a kind of patronizing tone. And they'd known that I was just hanging out with Jessica as a friend. But I felt like resistance in me want to say, like, I'm going to tell her that we're just friends just in case she does have any romantic feelings toward me.
Yeah, so that very day that I was going to tell him I'm in love with you, he was going to tell me I'm not interested. And we hung out, just had a normal day.
Pretty typical, other than Jessica wanting to put her head on my shoulder. And I had noticed, like, her wanting to be close, I guess, physically.
Mm-hmm. And all day I kept saying, God, is it now? And he said, no, not yet. And it got all the way until like 8 p.m. And Elijah was like, I think I'm going to leave about 9. And I was like, God, when? Like, hurry up, tell me it's time. And we were watching some random TV show, and he said, okay, after this episode, tell him. And I was like, okay, just trying to act normal. And so I had prepared a homecoming gift for Elijah. And if you don't know what an acrostic is, it's where you take each letter of the person's name, and for each letter you write a trait about them that you like. And so what I wanted to communicate to him was that it was like this deep admiration, like these are the things that I see in you, that I admire in you, and this love that I have for you is so deep. And so I gave that to him, and he was like, wow, this means a lot.
I really love personalized gifts, and that was like one of the first personalized gifts that I had gotten from her, and it was really nice, and I still have it.
And I was just kind of like, awkward silence, and he was like, so you want to like play a game or something before we leave? And I'm like, actually, I need to tell you something. And how long would you say I took?
I think I waited about a minute of her turning a little bit red in the face.
It felt like at least 5 minutes to me. I don't know.
I wouldn't have let you wait that long.
Yeah, so I was just trying to get the words out and just like freaking out, overthinking, and just feeling embarrassed. So he was sitting on my bed and I was sitting in a chair, and we were facing each other. And I was looking down at the floor thinking like, God, what do I do? And I just saw his hand like this. And I just like looked at his hand like, what is he doing? Should I hold his hand? Does he want to pull me up? I didn't know what was going on.
I was noticing that she was struggling a lot, and so I held out my hand to give her some strength to help her with whatever. I think I knew what she was going to say.
So I just like held his hand and I looked into his eyes. And I am telling you, it was like I was looking into the face of Jesus. Like his eyes just like pierced my heart. And I felt like this immense love that I'd never felt from another human being in my entire life. And I don't remember the exact words. He said something like, you can do this, or it's okay, you can tell me. And then this strength rose up in me, and I said, I'm in love with you. And then I just suddenly burst into tears, and I was like trying to hold it together. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, it was just so hard to say that and so scary. And I still didn't know how he felt about me.
It wasn't until she said, I'm in love with you, that I noticed how beautiful her heart was. I was blinded before that moment. My eyes were open to her spiritual and physical beauty. And I knelt down and I hugged her, and she cried on my shoulder, and it was like the words just came up out of me saying, I think we feel the same way. Like I didn't even think about the words. They just came out.
And that was just the most like amazing moment of my life. I could hardly believe it. And so we just like prayed together.
And then I went home and my parents were still up like 9:30, 10. And they noticed I had a smirk on my face. They were like, "So, you had a good time?" And I paused and was just smiling. And they were like, "Something happened?" And I was like, "We fell in love with each other."
About time.
And then my mom was like, "It's about time." And then and then we hugged and had a nice time together. And I think Jessica did the same with her parents.
Yeah. And just a couple days later, we sat in his parents' living room, the two of us and our parents. And Elijah asked my dad permission to court me in pursuit of marriage. So we courted for 15 months, and God brought us through some really intense inner healing. And
even though all of those scars were coming up and all of the nasty pasts that we both have were coming out into the light, God just used love to cover up a multitude of sins in both of our lives.
So I just want to encourage you, whether you're in a romantic relationship or you want to be in a romantic relationship, to just put God first. Because every time that we have put God first, He's honored that. And He's going to honor you.
Yeah, so we speak blessing over you and your significant other in Jesus' name. Thank you guys for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah.
55 minutes.
What?
Holy guacamole.
What? No. 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 No way. No freaking way.
This is gonna be the longest recording ever.
Oh my gosh.